Well, welcome everybody here tonight to this first of three sessions that the Honours Board Chair, Bruce Girdwood, is going to run, each one focused at a different level. Tonight we're looking at the Licentiate level. We also have Stephanie Forrester has joined us. She is the Honours Board Secretary. And to make this process run smoothly, Bruce usually likes to have questions through his session, but to control it, if you have a question, can I ask that you put them in the chat and then I will feed them to Bruce along the way. That has two advantages. One is that it actually keeps the focus on Bruce's session for the recording. But the second thing is that the chat itself gets recorded and is then available so Stephanie can get a handle on what sort of topics have actually been covered during the evening. So without further ado, take it all over to you, Bruce. And I have enabled screen sharing, so you should be able to
Right, you should have a screen being shared. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, brilliant. All right, good evening, everybody. It's really nice to be able to work with you again this evening. So the purpose of tonight is really just to help you better understand what the licentiate is all about. And I've got a bit of a presentation I'll go through. And the objective is really just to create as much clarity as I can. And I have some idea about where people have questions. But there'll be areas where I'll get it wrong. So the main purpose is for you to ask questions, but I will give you some basic stuff first, if I can get to the right screen. All right, so are you seeing the change? Right, so today we'll just talk a little bit, why do we have an honour system? What does it take to get it? And so what are the requirements, and then how do you prepare your set? And I'll just work my way through that. And it's also always good to remember why we make photographs. The reason I raised this question is that how many of you genuinely go out and photograph for yourselves, or when you're making photographs, thinking about the judge or the honours board or whoever you want to show those photos to as to what they think, what you think that they want. So the objective is to make photographs that are true and authentic to you. And if they shine through as that, then they'll be pretty good images. It's a very good place to start. So don't try and photograph for somebody else, photograph for yourself and be right true to it. So tonight we'll try and understand the requirements of the honour system, how you prepare for a submission. We'll talk a bit about the assessment process so you can see what we do when we go and look at the at your sets and assess them, and the objective is to increase your chances for success. Our objective is ultimately to have everybody who applies successful. So if we are doing our job well and you're doing your job well, that should be an outcome which we should be able to achieve. And my view is that there is no such thing as a percentage success rate. If you get over the line, you're over the line, and that's it. Right. So quick question here, why do we have an honour system? The purpose of PSNZ is, and I'm going to change this, is to grow photographers. And in order to do that, we have some ways in which we help you do that and give you some idea of where you are in your growth as a photographer. And so that is through those three distinctions: the licentiate, the associate, and the fellowship. And the licentiate is, yes.
Sorry, you might need to stop screen sharing and then restart it again, because we're actually seeing the PowerPoint. We're not seeing the display side of the PowerPoint. We're seeing.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Stop that share. Thanks, Paul. I didn't realize that. So we'll do two.
If you start screen sharing again, and you should be able to see the one that's actually the presentation rather than the presenter's view.
Okay, so you're getting the presentation now.
Mm.
Are you getting the presentation now, Paul?
No.
Interesting, because it's telling me that it's that desktop. Weird. Stop sharing. Get that one. How's that? Nope, it's still got the wrong one, hasn't it?
No, that's the right one.
Okay, great. Well, that is exactly what I did before. All right, sorry, people. We'll just take it that technology sometimes has its foibles. All right. So the purpose of PSNZ is to grow good photographers, and one of the way in which we try to help growing good photographers is to give you something to aim at through the licentiate, the associate, and the fellowship. The licentiate is the more beginner, and the associate is the more advanced, and the fellowship is mastery. So we'll talk about those, but I'm going to concentrate mainly on the licentiate for tonight. A question that people often ask is, is there a template that we put out there for you to to build your honours around? And the answer is no, we don't. There is a good reason for that. And if we put a set of rules out there and a template, and you follow the cookie cutter, as it were, then we'd end up with everybody doing the same thing. And that's definitely not the objective, because we go back to the beginning, which is the objective is to foster the creation of artists. And those artists are people who are able to express themselves in their unique way. So too many rules and a template would certainly inhibit that. So we provide guidelines, and those guidelines are a space. If you could think of it like a rugby field, that's your playing field, and play how you like within that playing field. And you can find those guidelines on the PSNZ website. We will, Paul, I think we should be quite happy if we put this presentation up on the website so people can have a look at it, and they can jump into the links as well.
Yeah.
So that I would highly recommend that you go and read those guidelines. I will work my way through them through this presentation, so you won't see anything different here that you won't find in the guidelines. But it's really important for you to understand those guidelines, because we are working very hard to be as consistent as we can against those guidelines, so that we create a body of acceptances which give people really good examples of what works. And consistency is really important in that space. So what are the key elements of the guidelines? So the licentiate, it's all about craft. And the question I tend to think is a good one to ask is, I can use a range of equipment in a range of situations and conditions to make photographs that are competent, but don't necessarily say too much about me. So, I mean, don't take that last bit too seriously, because whatever you do, whatever you photograph says something about you. What I mean by that is more the interpretive side of photography, and licentiate can well do that, but actually the main thing that we're looking for is your use of craft. So there's an idea, you've then converted that idea into a photograph, and that photograph communicates idea well because it's well constructed. So that's the high level view of the licentiate. The key areas that we assess when we're looking at a licentiate is, one, the demonstration of your photographic proficiency. So of course you have to be able to make a good, well-composed photograph that tells a story or communicates something. Diversity is the other key area that we look at. And when you go back to the previous slide, when you look at this title at the top, the requirement at the top, the key words here, range of equipment in a range of situations and conditions, which tells us that you have general skills in photography. So the licentiate is looking for you to demonstrate a general set of skills, and that's what we call diversity. And then we look for you to present those in a cohesive portfolio. So we've thought about you putting them together as a set that works together as a body of work, and that's tied together. And we'll talk about each one of these in succession. Right. Photographic proficiency. So for the licentiate, we're looking that you're able to put together a competent photograph. And what does that mean? So you've got a photograph that has got different elements to it. There's this thing called visual design. So this is the craft of photography. So if you think about a table and you put a flat bit and 4 legs and then make them all level, and this table stands up correctly and it can fit a chair and you can sit behind it and you can actually do what you need to do with a table, that's craft. But if you're making a table that is an artistic piece of work that is unique to you, that's more of art. So the craft we're looking for is the key components of composition that actually help convey the story within the image, but it's done in a fairly basic way. The next bit is composition. So the composition is the way you take that visual design and arrange it in a way that is unique and in your way. And then if those things come together, your photograph is communicating, it's telling you something, it's evoking a feeling, it's telling a story, it's communicating information. And then the style is the individuality. Has the photographer shown me a different view? So what we're looking for in the associate is more on the left-hand side of that diagram, with that is telling you in a fairly simple way what the communication is of that image. So it's not advanced craft, it's beginner craft. So diversity, what is this? So it's important because we are looking for you to demonstrate those general skills in photography. And you can show us this by using multiple lenses and their settings, different lighting conditions, and different subject matters. So from a lens point of view, we need to be able to see that you can use either wide angle and close up. So that's the diversity of lenses, and you just show different skills using each one of those lenses, and then use of depth of field, for example. So these are not, I'm not being comprehensive here. I'm saying these are areas in which you can explore to show depth of field, show diversity. So a wide angle lens communicates differently to a close-up lens, and then shallow depth of field creates a different feel to a long depth of field. So just showing us that you can use these techniques broadly to be able to communicate your story. And then different lighting conditions to show how you can manage exposure in different conditions, and then create mood or drama or whatever you want to with the image. So in bright conditions, we need to be able to see that you can expose correctly, and in darker conditions, we need to see that too. And we like to be able to see how you can use light to create drama or mood, or different dramas and different moods. And those are just examples again. And then different subject matters. So can you photograph macro, landscape, portrait, documentary, nature? Now, of course, when we look at all of these together, there's a lot to be covered. We don't expect you to cover it all. We expect you to cover enough that gives us the impression that or the perception that if we put you in a certain circumstance, you are likely to be able to make a photograph because you understand how to use your lenses, you understand how to photograph light, and that you are comfortable in a wide range of subject matters. And I hope that makes sense. Okay, so the portfolio is that ability to create a coherent body of work. This is often a stumbling block for people because we don't often use portfolios in club circumstances. All our learning is around the single image and how it tells a story. So we don't often practice it. So it is just an additional skill that we're looking for in the honours. So as it says below, a successful portfolio will take you on a journey, and this says start strongly and take you on the journey. But I think the journey is the issue. One image can lead to another by links of shape, color, texture. You can use a consistent tone across all of them. You can go from large things to small things. You can go from light to dark through your set, and just be very careful of stronger images or weaker images, or images that just stand out in your portfolio, because they'll drag the attention to that image and take away from all the others. So we're looking to be able to be engaged in the whole set, and that it holds together as a body of work. And I'll show you some examples which will help with that. Okay, so portfolios viewed differently when we look at prints and digital images. So the prints are viewed as one body of work. So for the licentiate, that's 10 images, and they are placed on a set of easels, and you're allowed up to 3 rows. So you think about how you can put this into 3 rows and look at the whole body of images. The digital images are viewed one after the other. So the important thing to remember when you are putting up a digital set is that it's the transition from one image to the next image, and then the overall impression that left in the mind. So just think about the progression and the flow from one image to the other. You could have a very deliberate contrast from one image to the other, or you could have a very deliberate transition of tones, colors, lines, subject matters that give the viewer the sense that you've thought carefully about how you work through the set. All right, themes quite often pop up. So people like themes because they hang together very nicely as a portfolio. But one of the downsides of a theme is that it can be at the cost of diversity. Now, it doesn't have to be. So if you think you can take 10 portraits with the same lighting of different people, that doesn't show diversity, because you've got a portrait that's cropped the same, you've used the same lighting, but you've used 10 different people. That only shows one set of skills, right? Maybe a little bit of a second skill, which might be posing people. But what you'd meet if you wanted to do portraits as a theme, you'd have to put your portraits in different environments. You'd have to use different lighting. You'd have to use different lenses, and you'd have to show that you're able to work in a general sense as well. Okay. Okay, so we offer guidelines but not rules. We've spoken a little bit about this already. So work within those guidelines and use them as a playing field and show us your genius within that place. You don't have to play a game of rugby in that rugby field. You could play any game you like. Okay, so when you're putting it together, it's important that you have a plan. Our experience is that people don't always do as well if they are literally picking their images from history. Because of the portfolio and the general skills aspect of this, the diversity aspects of the licentiate, you have to have thought about what you want to demonstrate and how you want to demonstrate it as a portfolio. So quite often it's better and easier, and you have a higher chance of success if you start this body of work from scratch and have a plan and execute your plan and develop it as you go. So sometimes you might think of something, go out and try it, and then you come back and put it together as a portfolio and realize that it's actually not doing what you want to do, or you're not showing all the different skills that you want to show. So you might have to develop this. So you start and then you iterate to where you get to. And also be brutal with yourself, because we have an unconscious bias with our photographs. And sometimes you'll make a photograph which you absolutely love, but when it goes into the set, it's the one that sticks out like the proverbial, and it's the only one that anyone looks at. So from a portfolio perspective, it might not be the right image to have in your set. So think carefully about the overall and be careful about that unconscious bias. And this is where it's quite helpful to get somebody to come and give you some feedback. So I wouldn't recommend that you go looking for feedback and ask people to tell you what to do. That's something you need to do for yourself, because this is your honor and it's expressing yourself. But if you want to go and get somebody to look at it and give you some feedback in terms of how you think it holds together and what quality of imagery they think, then by all means do that. But that's at the advanced stage, not at the early stage. Yeah, so that feedback's that's not a problem, and that that feedback can quite often identify those photographs, which are the standout ones, which may or may not be a good idea to have in your image. So that gets past your own unconscious bias and helps you take that step forward. Right. Okay. Paul, I'm happy to take some questions now if any have popped up.
No, there's been no questions so far, Bruce.
Okay, so hopefully that's all clear. So now I'll try and demonstrate the same ideas that I've explained through sets of images that have been successful. I'm just getting my, this won't take too long. Okay, so can you, is that website showing, Paul?
Yes, yeah, we can see that. Sorry, there has been 2 questions that have come in.
Sure, let's go.
Will the names of unsuccessful candidates be announced?
No. So that is your private space. If you want to tell people that you were unsuccessful, you're welcome to do so. We will not be doing that. We will respect your privacy completely, but we will give you feedback.
Okay, and Russ says, can we talk about the size of prints?
That's all in the guidelines, but yes, we can talk about the size of the prints, but I'll have to go to the guidelines because I'm terrible at remembering those details off the top of my head. Okay, so we'll go to the, they're all written up in the guidelines, but Paul, remember when we get to the end, just remind me to
400 by 400 by 500 matted, or full overall size, which is 20 by 16 inches.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Stephanie.
Yeah.
Richard has asked, can a portfolio mix black and white and color successfully?
Absolutely. As you can see in the set that we've got in front of us here, if I can find a way of zooming down. Okay. So yes, you can mix them. As you can see, this image, although it's color, it looks quite monochrome, but there are plenty of people who have mixed them. And I think the challenge with mixing them is arranging it in a portfolio that works. And sometimes you could sandwich a monochrome between 2 colors, or 2 rows, a row of color, a row of monochrome, a row of color, or monochrome at the top and color at the bottom, or whatever works for you in terms of how you build up that portfolio. So yes, and you also can have all color or all monochrome, because I think you can still show diversity in portfolio using black and white or monochrome versus color. So it doesn't really matter. Is there anything else there, Paul?
No.
Okay, great. So looking at this portfolio, this licentiate submission, let's first look at the quality of the imagery. So all of those images are good images. They all showing some information, or telling a story, or conveying information. There's 4 nature images, and each one of those are showing different aspects of the different birds, and the 2 top ones are flying in the sky, and so they don't show the environment, but the bottom one on the left shows environment, gives some information, which is great. And then the far right on the middle row shows a different aspect and different lighting conditions, and shows the ability to photograph in a contrasty environment and still show all the information. Some simple compositions, but they all work. Show that with the lightning that this person can photograph in an interesting situation, capture something that's quite difficult to capture. The sky tower, if it is a sky tower, is a night shot, and then there's a portrait image and a landscape image and an action image. So there's quite a lot of diversity, different uses of lenses and lighting conditions. The layout is quite obvious in my mind anyway. So if you look at all the images on the edges, they're all facing inwards. So when I look into the set, I look in from the left, and then there's some static images in the middle, so it holds me, and then I go to the right, and then all those images push me back into the middle, and so I'm contained within that whole portfolio. So as a viewer, I'm forced to actually look at all of those images, and there's no single image that sticks out more than the others. There is one that is slightly more dominant than the rest, but it's not so dominant that it becomes the sole point of view. I hope that explains that set well. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate. Paul, you just draw my attention to it straight away. All right. So this set here by Carol, again, you can see the tones and the colors and the underlying base tones are all very consistent. There's some careful thought being put to how the set holds together. So top row, looking inwards to something static. Middle row, everything's looking inwards to static landscapes. And then the bottom row has got those circles holding you in and pulling you to the spider. The bottom row is a darker, more saturated row, and so it's a good solid base. And then moving up to the next row, you've got wildlife, you've got landscape. On the top, you've got an abstract or a close-up, and you've got some form of portraiture. And so a nice diverse set. We can look in different lighting conditions. You've got low light, you've got contrasty light, you've got even light. All of those things are shown quite nicely in this set as well. So a really good licentiate. Here again, we've got a genus set. Again, you can see from a portfolio perspective, the top row, you've got the circles and something static in the middle. You've got leaning in on the bottom row and the top and the middle row. If I was to criticize this set just a little bit, this image here is taking us out of the image. And there is a person lying over here, and there's this dreamy feel to this image. I think if this person was more dominant, it would push you into the set a little bit more. But as it stands, this image could draw you out. But because the rest of the set has been carefully thought through, and we can see that Gina has been considering the layout, and it's worked quite well. It's absolutely fine. So we don't expect absolute perfection. So sometimes there'll be a couple of faults, but we'll just let them go, because in general, we think that the general skills of photography have been shown. There's good diversity, and some decent thought has been given to the portfolio. So it doesn't have to be perfect. All right. So again, here there's nature, there's night photography, there's something abstract. And this is such a clever image. I remember when we looked at this, we all really enjoyed this image, because it's a different way of seeing a sign and showing the shadow being crumpled up by the shape of the wall was quite good. So dreamy images, nature images, good use of perspective, something a little bit more abstract over here, and then the use of long exposure and camera movement together with multiple exposure. So all of them convey well, and we can see that there's some general skills. All right. Just going to move this down. We'll look at some. Why won't this do what I wanted to do? There we go. We'll look at some digitals. The computer's a bit slow tonight. Any questions coming yet, Paul?
No.
Sorry, can I just ask the sizing of the prints again, please?
I better unmute myself. 16 inches by 20, and that includes your mat or however you want to finish it.
Okay, thank you.
Which is basically 400 by 500. 400 by 500 is millimeters less, but I accept either.
Okay. So that's including the mat.
That's including the mat, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
I don't know what's going on here tonight. We've got good internet, so hopefully it's not the website.
Well, I tried to download the guidelines from the website and it keeps coming up file too large. And I don't think it's my PC, but I'll have another go at a bash later.
I'll try and get it from this page. No, I don't know what's going on, Paul.
Dear, let me.
Maybe. Let's see if I can just get it out of Chrome.
We moved hosts a month or so ago, supposedly to give us better service, but it's been a problem ever since. Yeah, the website seems to be extremely slow. I'm not even getting to the home page at present.
Yeah, just for your information, I'm trying to do it on another screen. I'm getting exactly what you've got. It won't load.
Yeah.
Asked me to run network diagnostics.
Okay. All right. Sorry about that. So should we just give this a few minutes and see if we can keep going with the conversation? I'm just going to click that again and see whether I can restart it. All right. All right. Any questions?
Sorry, Bruce. Okay, sorry, right. What's the preferred digital size and DPI?
Okay, so all of those are written up in detail in the guidelines. Stephanie, if you can, I don't know if you can get to them now, or do you have that on paper?
No, I've been having trouble. I'll have a hunt because I have them. I know I've got them downloaded. I just want to make sure I had the latest downloaded.
Yeah. So yes, those details are very well spelled out. Oh, there we go. We've got this back again now. All of those details are very well spelled out in the guidelines. Right, here we go. We've got the digitals.
Cool.
Are there any other questions?
Yeah, just another question. Does every image have to demonstrate a different technique?
No. All we need to see is over your portfolio a range of that you have got general skills. So show us as many techniques as you can. But it doesn't. Not every single image has to have a different technique, but there needs to be enough variation to give us the sense of your general skills. All right. Anything else there, Paul?
No, that was it.
Great, thanks. All right, so this is a digital set. So the way we look at them on the website is you can click on the first one and it pops up, and then you can use the right arrow to work your way through. So yeah, I remember this image well. I think it was called Cooking with Gas. And yeah, I mean, you can see this is a very creative image. This person knows how to use light, knows how to put an image together, and knows how to be creative. So that's showing a lot of skills. This image, although flowing from this image, there's a vertical that flows through, but you can see there's a big contrast between one to the other. So that flow is not ideal. But what this image does show is somebody's being able to see the relationship between things, and it's really interesting to see a reflection within a building within a building. So, and that's well composed, well put together, and a good exposure. And you can see the blues are flowing through into this image, and you're getting a good nature image. Great use of depth of field because the background's blurred enough. Good use of shutter speed because the whole bird is sharp, and good exposure because you can see all the detail on that bird. And there's blacks and whites, and they've been handled very well. Then we've got a lovely portrait showing these children watching television or something. And that little doll peeping out is just a lovely little touch, and that lovely accent with the flower. So if you look at the flow, you're going from reds to blues, and then burn back to red. So that flow is a little bit jarring. But again, we're moving into something darker again. And here we've got another set of skills being shown. So this person is able to take us into a fantasy world. And then this is showing that it can get close up and use long exposures and can get a reasonable composition out of it. And again, this is the use of wide angle lens and a good depth of field. And it tells a really good story by drawing the relationships between the memorials, that the different kinds of memorials that are here. Getting in close and showing a different story. And again, good use of light and good exposure. And then getting in close and showing depth of field again, a different kind of a story. And then we get into something a little bit more action. And we're back to the beginning. So you can see there are elements of flow. It's not perfect, but we've got a good diversity, and we've got a good level of photography. If you were to ask me to show you a weak point, this image is a weaker image in that whites are not absolutely well exposed. The composition is a little bit simple, but it does leave you wondering what the heck happened to the fisherman on the left. So that really leaves us with quite a question. And so from a photographic technique, that's good. Okay. So good. Yes.
Sorry. Before you move on to the next set, a couple of questions have come in. So two questions basically: are titles necessary? Do they carry any weight in the evaluation, and are they considered part of the image?
The answer to those is not always absolute. So if you don't want to have titles, there's no expectation to have titles. Is there, Steph? There isn't in the guidelines, is there?
No, there's not, and it doesn't make any difference at all as to whether there are titles or not.
Yeah. So again, for me and the Honours Board, we spend a lot of time talking about how we're going to assess and be really consistent against the guidelines. And also we assess what's in front of us rather than what we think the photographer should do. So the guidelines don't say titles, but if you choose to put a title in, we will look at their set with the title, and of course the title will have an impact. So we will assume that because you put a title in, you expect it to be seen as part of the image, and so we will look at the whole package. At the end of the day, though, it's the image that needs to really do the talking. And so you'd have to really have garbage titles for it to really significantly sway us. But if you've got a good combination of titles and images, then that just adds to the experience. But again, it's your call, and at the end of the day, it's about the photography mostly. Anything more there, Paul?
Stephanie has posted the pixel size, which everybody can see in the chat. Jim has asked, does your first submission have to be as a licentiate, or can it be associate?
That's also in the guidelines, and yes, it could be an associate. If we look at the statistics, though, it shows that people who have already got a licentiate have a high success rate at the associate. So those who go straight to the associate, the proportion of those people that don't succeed is higher than those that that first do a licentiate. So I suppose this gives you the opportunity to learn and practice the portfolio and the diversity aspects, so that when you get to the associate, you know what step up to make. But there's nothing to say that you can't go straight to an associate.
The other distinction, however, is that you can enter a licentiate as either an individual PSNZ member or as a member of an affiliated camera club, but you have to be a PSNZ individual member to submit for the associate.
Yep. Okay. Is there anything else there, Paul?
No, that's it.
Okay. So let's go to this one, and immediately you can see at this in this layout that there's some really careful thought given to the transition. So you've got the reds and the darks moving slowly to getting lighter and lighter. And you can see over here that this image is probably the standout one, in that it's sandwiched between two darker ones and it's got quite a bright area here. So let's look at how it looks as a progression. So yeah, a lovely concept here, and also nicely shown with good lighting and good composition. And the music theme flows through and the reds flow through, shows that this person can do tabletop photography, they can use interesting lighting, and they can also use good depth of field. And here, a nice sort of progression from there to there in terms of the light. And again, shows good lighting and shows good concentration on what the person is doing. And actually the hands are looking great in this image too, although the one hand is just a bit bright. But you don't need to see the eyes or the face to know and understand the concentration and the connection. Yeah, good composition, good use of light, good use of long exposure. Again, showing we can do landscape / seascape. We can photograph it in natural light, but at a tricky time of day. The post-processing might not be perfect, but it's good enough to convey the idea. And then again, interesting direct lighting that shows off this cat and a nice close-up. Shows that we can photograph the night sky in another different set of lighting. This shows drama and again, the nice lighting, but it's a different technique again. And then good control of light here, good composition, and good story. So you can see that that passes the test on all the images. There's good diversity. There is good show of skills, photographic skills. Any questions, Paul?
Yeah, Andy's just asked, can the photos be taken by drone?
Oh yeah. At the end of the day, you need to have full control over your composition, and there's no reason why you couldn't do that on a drone. What wouldn't be good is somebody else making the photograph for you, but the drone, you can control the camera, you're looking at the composition on your screen, and you might as well be putting your camera on a tripod, setting it up, and then remote controlling it. So yeah, I think that's absolutely fine. And again, you can see with Emma's set here, there's good flow. There's one image that sticks out, but the yellows flow from one to the other. And we'll jump into it. Good landscape photography, good control of light, good relationship between the reflections and the mountain. Again, a very competent landscape, different lighting to what we had in the previous one. So this is softer lighting, it's a wider angle. This shows another aspect of the same thing before, shows control of light, shows that this person is not scared of light flare, and they can use this to its value to good effect in the image. So great image, can get into a bit of nature. This is a nice, interesting image, which it looks like the bird's literally about to land, or is hopping on its toes. So and shows good context. This image loses some detail in the darks, and the perspective on the bird is a bit interesting, but it is showing that this person's prepared to start telling the nature story, and the craft is not too far off. So we're happy with that. This shows use of long exposure, good composition, and leading lines that flow the way through and take you to a focal point, and good control of the exposure. Good action photograph, good timing. The moment is well caught, and the exposure is perfectly good for the circumstances. Yep, shows a bit of drama, getting close, showing the really interesting details of this waterfall landing in the water and in the wind and how everything's working. So again, good control of exposure, again, good control of composition. And this is something completely different, shows another set of skills altogether, and can show that fireworks in the context of the city, you know exactly where you are, and it feels big and grand. Again, interesting lighting conditions, interesting mood, and yeah, which comes across well. This image does have some post-processing issues, so you can see along the edges here, there's a little bit of haloing, so the burning and dodging has not been that great, starting to look a little bit artificial in the background, but you know, it's still competent, and within the context of all the images there, it's not, although it might not be perfect, it's showing this person is on a good journey, and it's a good set of images. Good landscape, good use of exposure, and the focal point. Is it an advanced landscape? No, but it shows a foreground, it shows a middle ground, it gives you a focal point, and then takes you into background, but you keep coming back. So is it, you know, this area here has got some interest, but it might not hold you forever. But we can see that the photographer's got some skill, and the craft is well demonstrated. So that's it. Any questions popped up from that, Paul?
No, not at present. This is the opportunity to ask questions.
All right. So well, I think, unless anybody wants me to work through other sets, I think this is probably said the key things that I wanted to share. So if there are any general questions, or people want me to work through more sets, please just say so. Maybe we'll look for another year of prints, because prints can, you know, that portfolio is can be a tricky thing in prints, if we can get there. You're on mute, Paul.
Bev has asked, is there a minimum size for digital?
No, well, the standard size for digital is 1920 by 1080, and you would always strive to have it as near as possible to the maximum size, because it will be viewed better by the Honours Board.
Yeah, so we now look at the images on a television screen. So just remember, the most important thing for you to do is to present your images in the best possible way, so that we can see them in their best light. So follow those guidelines, and you know, don't suppose there is a minimum size. I'm not going to dine and ditch about that, but the quality will show.
Mm.
Yeah.
Karen has asked, saying she is going to print her images on A4. Is that okay?
On what?
On A4 size. Is that okay?
Fine.
Yeah.
Yep. It doesn't exceed the maximum. One thing that we do ask you to do, though, is if you don't give us floppy prints, they need to be mounted in some way or another. I think the guidelines probably give you some ideas there, but they need to be rigid so that we can easily display them.
Okay. Glennis has asked, how important is orientation consistency throughout the set? I.e., if we're going from landscape to portrait, how many changes would be reasonable?
Yeah, good question. I think when you're looking at digital, it's important that you don't take us on a jumpy journey. So if you're changing orientations randomly, that's probably not going to work in your favor. But if you alternate, and we see there's something deliberate about that, then, and if it works, then that's also good. But the transition from one to the other is the important bit. So if you're doing that transition smoothly with your colors or your lines or whatever, that's absolutely fine. And we kind of expect that there is some variation in orientation, because that helps to show your general skills in composition and using those different formats. So as long as it's deliberate and it's obvious that it's deliberate, that will work really well for us.
Okay.
Right, anything else there, Paul?
No, lots of comments that it's very enlightening.
Okay, good.
And great presentation, very informative. One new message.
Thank you. All right, so just to give you an idea of how the board does its work, it's really important that people understand that we really take time and effort. We normally have around about 100 sets amongst 3 honours. We've got 3 days. It's a long 3 days, but we do have time to spend when we do our assessment. So at the beginning of every assessment, I spend an afternoon with the honours board, and we do an induction. That induction is for the benefit of everybody, not just the new members. And the board is now reasonably well established. We will be into us. 2 people will be into the 2nd year, and all the rest will have done 3 years or more. But we still do this induction to remind people of what the guidelines are, and that we also talk about the things that we will be pretty clear on. So what do we mean? Do we have a common understanding of diversity? Do we have a common understanding of portfolio? And do we have a common view of what the level of proficiency is for each one of the honours? Because it's important that we maintain that consistency throughout. It is also really important in that induction that the culture of the board is established, and that we stick to that culture. And the culture of the board is very much one of, as we see at the bottom there, you've got the board has got a wide range of experience. What we need to do is leverage that experience. And the way I think about this is that if you were to look at the planet as an alien, and the first thing you saw on the planet was, I don't know, some interesting building in Italy. If you chose to characterize the entire planet and all the cultures on the planet by what you saw, you'd be totally wrong. But if you sent out a squadron of people to look at different parts of the planet and come back with what they observed and tell you, you would get a much better picture of what's on the planet and the diversity that's within it. So the same thing is for a photograph. You make your photograph through your life experience, and we look at the photographs from our own perspectives and our own life experience. So you can't always expect me to respond to the image in the same way that you responded to the making of it, because we've got different life experiences. So the board members have got a wide range, and so the culture is really important. That the way we talk about the image and how we present our perspectives, and how we expect everyone on the board to listen to those perspectives rather than to try and argue their own perspective as being the right one. So I might respond to a set which I might say, no, that doesn't go for me. But there might be somebody else on the honours board that says, well, I really like that set. And then it's beholden to me to listen to their perspective on the set, as it is for them to listen to my perspective. At the end of the day, we vote for the sets, and there are 6 of us, and it's deliberately an even number of people so that it's not a majority wins. So if it's a split vote, it forces a conversation. And in fact, a 4-2 vote against, for me, also triggers a conversation because it's too marginal. And then we all take turns to talk if we want to. Everybody quietly listens. Everybody has to hear what somebody says. You don't have to agree with it, but they have to hear. And then when everybody's spoken, we take a vote. So it is a process which we hope has got a lot of integrity. It's in fact designed to have that integrity, and the way we operate the process is with high integrity. If somebody has seen an image or a set of images before, they declare that they've seen it, and then I will ask them a question. The question, do you think you can be unbiased in assessing the set and making a vote? And if the answer is no, they abstain. And if the answer is yes, we trust that they've got integrity to do that. And if anybody wants to revisit a set at any time, we can do that. So at the end of the set, if there's a split decision, for example, and we can't get to an agreement, in other words, we vote 2 times, maybe a 3rd time, and it's still split, we put that set aside. And then at the end of the assessment, we come back to that set and we keep going with that set until we get a decision. Right. And it's a positive process, right? We honor people's work. So, we're always looking for the positive and always looking for ways in which we can get it across the line, but without compromising the quality of the honour itself. Any questions popped out of that, Paul?
No, just a couple of comments of people who've actually said that they were almost postponing their submissions, but have now decided that they're going to give it a go.
Lovely. Great. So this demonstrates for me why we have to listen to each other and why we have to try and see other people's perspectives. So everything's an opinion when it comes to photography and art. It's not a fact. And so everything we see is a perspective. It's not necessarily the truth. So if you were the person on the right-hand side, you'd see a three ends. If you were the person on the left-hand side, you'd see 4 ends. If you didn't swap ends, you would always argue with each other that the other one was wrong, when in fact, nobody's wrong. So this is what we try to do on the Honours board, and we should do more generally with all our conversations about photography.
Chrysaeus has asked, will we be given feedback about our successes or unsuccessful sets?
Right, we'll give you feedback on your unsuccessful set. Your feedback on your successful set is that you've been successful and you've met the criteria that we've asked for. And I'm not going to go and do any more than that. For the unsuccessful sets, we will give you feedback in a video recording, and the feedback will be almost exactly what you have seen me talking through on the images that I've already spoken about this afternoon. It's just an evaluation of the set in the context of the 3 criteria of photographic proficiency, diversity, and portfolio, and we will point out where we think you have fallen short of those, so that you will understand quite clearly why your set didn't get through. You might find that hard to receive because your set is personal, and I apologize for that, but I think we do owe it to you to give you the feedback as honestly and as directly as we can. The intention is to help you, not to make you not want to do it again. Sometimes the feedback is best listened to, put aside, go back to a month later. Your objectivity has returned a little bit. You're not as subjective as you might have been in the beginning, and then you might hear a little bit better that feedback. But just open yourself to the feedback. And we do absolutely appreciate that feedback is not always easy to receive on your photography, but if you've got a real desire to grow, that feedback can be really helpful.
Cool. The next question is probably one more for Stephanie to answer. What is the time for entering and closing?
You will find all those details in the guidelines. I really, really encourage you to download them, print them off, read and digest them really, really closely. But submissions will open on the 21st of June and they close at 5 p.m. on the 2nd of August. So you've got a good 6 weeks from opening time please don't leave it till the last minute, because I will close the jot form and you may miss out. Also, if you're submitting a print set, I would really encourage you to make sure your prints are with the courier a week before closing. Couriers at the moment still seem to be notoriously slow and haphazard in terms of delivery. So
And
yeah, I look forward to them coming. 115 last year. I'm hoping there won't be so many this year, but it was a lot of work.
Yeah. So please, I would like to reaffirm what Stephanie said about reading those guidelines. Some of the basic mistakes that are made are because people haven't read the guidelines, both from the diversity, the portfolio, and the proficiency point of view, but also in those guidelines are some important bits of information around packaging and the use of certain materials, etc., etc. Please listen, read those and pay attention, because I can tell you that the work that happens behind the scene with Stephanie and her team is huge. So getting your images in on time and then following the guidelines around packaging and the use of things like sellotape, etc., makes such a big difference to the amount of work that Steph and her team have to put in. And I can't stress that enough. All volunteers, and it's a huge volume of work.
Russ has asked, can an unsuccessful A set be awarded an L?
I have no idea. Because if you want to put it in as an L, you'd be welcome to, but because it didn't pass an associate doesn't guarantee you 1 second that it will get a licentiate.
Yeah, they're each considered separately, Russ, so it's not a downgrade. It's not, we're going to pull 2 images out of an A set and say, yes, you're at the L level, and you can only apply for 1 level at a time.
Yeah, so you could try and put it in the following year, but I don't, it might have failed an associate because the proficiency of those photographs or the diversity or the combination of those were just not there, and therefore it may not also pass a licentiate. So it just depends on the nature of that set.
Doug has made a comment that he had a negative response last year, but the feedback was extremely informative and done in a very polite manner.
Oh, thank you, Doug.
Just one thing in terms of the way the process runs, the selection or the discussion that the Honours Board has is completely anonymous. Stephanie is actually the only person down there who actually knows who has submitted what. And in fact, the Honours Board don't even find out who has been successful until the very end when they have a meeting and Stephanie actually announces to them the names of the people that have been successful.
Yeah, it's really important that we are as unbiased as we can be. And there's your Honours Board. So a good group of people, they've all got good experiences and different perspectives. We don't have a specialist nature person at the moment because they need to be a fellow, and they and we don't have one at the moment that has got an PSNZ, but so John Reed helps us as a specialist advisor. So if we need to have some questions asked about the nature sets, then he will help. So that's just raises for me also that we haven't spoken much about nature. So nature still has to have all the same. You need to have a portfolio, you need to be proficient, and you need to show diversity as best you can.
Okay, last opportunity to ask any questions, and then otherwise we will wrap this up because Bruce has got another 2 of these to do.
And I haven't had dinner yet.
Just wanted to say thank you. This has been very, very useful and informative, and gives me a better understanding. So, thank you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure, Sue. Thank you too.
Thank you.
All right, should we call it?
Oh, Karen
thanks,
Truth
Bruce.
said, are you able to recommend somebody to give an overview of our portfolio?
Am I able to?
Mm.
Of someone in your club that's got that has recently achieved their licentiate or associate, and somebody that understands the guidelines. So my experience is that there are a lot of people out there that are experts, but if you ask them about whether they have ever read the guidelines and understand them, I bet you the answer would be no. So be very careful that you don't get misled by experts out there that are not experts. That's all I'd say.
Karen, there is also, if you're on Facebook, we do have a closed Facebook group that helps out with Licentiate. And last year, basically, a lot of them, when they were very close to actually having their sets sorted, would seek other people's opinion of them. Nobody on the Honours Board has any connection whatsoever with that group. So there's no danger of anybody there seeing your images.
Yeah, but again, make sure that people understand the guidelines, because they're the important bit.
Wendy, I suggest you actually read the guidelines, because it's actually in there about the pixel per inch measurements. Those get very confusing. If you're printing, you want to print to your highest resolution possible, so your print is sharp. Whereas if you're doing a digital, it's 300. It's expressed as 300 DPI, but that's actually a print measure, not a digital measure. Okay, can you send the link for the Facebook group? I'll post it into the PSNZ Facebook group, if that's okay, because I have to jump screens to do that. Okay, well, thank you, everybody. I will stop the recording, and then we can, people can sign off.